You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another show lineup for y'all. Today, we're going to be talking to a ADHD Executive Coach and international singer-songwriter. Her name is Nella Dwyer. She's going to share with us all about her business, everything that she does for her clients, and a little bit about her backstory and what got her to what she's doing today. So first and foremost, Nella, I want to say Nelly. Nella, thank you for your time this morning. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I get Nelly all the time, so don't worry.
Oh, well, I saw the imaginary Y. That's what I saw. So again, I appreciate you being here. So starting out first, tell us a little bit about your coaching expertise and why you chose to specifically focus on ADHD.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Shamaya. So I guess my whole life I've been a singer-songwriter. So it's only in the last sort of 6 or 7 years that I started working as an ADHD executive coach, neurodiversity consultant, and it all sort of happened by accident. So a family member got diagnosed with ADHD. When it was suspected, I was like, no way, they're really intelligent and et cetera, et cetera. So then when I looked up the symptoms, I was like, okay, this is me. And this explains a lot. And it is them, and it's many people in my family. And so from there, I sort of, got an ADHD coach. That was a recommendation. It changed my life in a very short period of time. I finally sort of understood how my brain works, and my whole life experience was sort of validated, good and bad, not just bad at all. I always say it's a very different brain. It's not a bad brain, just has different sort of good and bad. But it explained a lot. And I sort of had never done anything other than music, or never wanted to do anything other than music, and never needed to, but I sort of, needed to, I shouldn't say that, because anyway, it's the music industry, but, I suppose from a sort of emotionally spiritual level, I never needed to do anything else. But this sort of was something that changed my life so drastically. I kind of felt like I couldn't gatekeep this information, and turned out I was pretty good at it when I started I did my training for a year. And so I work with really exceptional brains from around the world, really, really interesting people. And I now have both careers. But it's been an incredible addition to my life, actually, in so many ways, So that's a short story long. Hopefully,
when you think about some of the common challenges that not just you facing personally, but the people that you work with, executives and creatives who have to deal with ADHD. How do you see those common challenges come to play? And what are some of the things that you've seen help them to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, again, I suppose, as I said, it's just a very different brain. So the operating system, when people say to me, give us some tips or tricks or some symptoms of ADHD, it's not me being smart or sarcastic. It's actually, if I said to you, well, give me some tips or tricks or symptoms of the neurotypical brain, how would you answer, right? And there is that much information about the ADHD brain, right? The same as our neurotypical, understanding of our neurotypical brains. And we spend years in school learning about how our brains work, right? So it really is very similar. The manual when I did my training back then, it's 10,000 pages, so it's a very different operating system. And so, I have ADHD. Would I give it back? I wouldn't, actually. It's the reason for my hyper-focus, my resilience with the music career I've had, but also it causes a lot of challenges. But I guess to sort of explain that a little bit further, the one sort of example I always give is, most people with ADHD will be told all their lives, why are you so sensitive? You're too sensitive, And that's true. That's very true. We can have rejection sensitivity. It's called RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So any sort of received or perceived rejection that we get feels like a physical pain. You can see it in a brain scan, the same pain receptors as if somebody was punched in the arm. So it is a physical pain that we feel in our chest, and we can often impulsively give back the same amount of hurt as we just received, whether it was an intentional rejection or just a perceived rejection. So, that hurts us a lot, right? However, on the other side of that symptom or trait, if I wasn't that sensitive, which I am, but if I wasn't that sensitive, I wouldn't be able to write the songs to cause people to be able to process their own emotions in a crowd, at a gig or a show. How could I write those songs, right, if I didn't have access to that depth of sensitivity? So, it is a really just different blueprint of how our brains work and operate. And I suppose the challenges and difficulties that people with ADHD have is that we've never been given the manual for how our brains work. So therefore, we're expected to kind of show up as other people expect us to, and that can cause us to have a lot more symptoms. So, like masking and showing up as we think people want us to show up, and then sort of abandoning our sense of self. So my job when I work with people is sort of to validate their life experience, put names on different things that have happened or symptoms they have or challenges they have. So that gives them a lot of validation that they're not broken or crazy. It's just called this, and it requires a different approach. But also to sort of build them up from the ground up again. I call it building their personal operationals manual for them, for how they work. And that's understanding themselves, understanding what their values are, what their needs are. Usually we really abandon our own needs for somebody else's. And sort of fully understanding themselves so that they can build back that confidence and trust in themselves. And I work with a lot of very successful people, so it's not like people with ADHD can't be successful, but we would rather get to that point without the overwhelm, without the burnout, without the sort of nervous system being jacked up too much. But, if you look at sort of all the top entrepreneurs in the world, most of us are neurodivergent, so how could that be bad, right? So it's not a bad thing. It's just in the current world of what our understanding and education around how an ADHD brain might work, things can be challenging. So I suppose there's so many symptoms and so many traits, good and bad. Like I said, overwhelm and burnout would be really, really common. Reasons for that is because with ADHD, the H in ADHD is hyperactivity, and that's usually hyperactivity of the brain, not necessarily physically. Most likely not physically, it's mentally. So that would mean that we get lots of thoughts at the exact same time at all times. And the challenge for us is the risk of which thought to execute the function of, so executive functioning. And so that's why it can be very overwhelming, number one. Number two, that's why it can be a real asset, because that's why we're natural problem solvers, because our brains are naturally good at that. We're naturally doing that in real time. We're natural idea generators, entrepreneurs, problem solvers, great in a crisis. So again, do you see what I'm saying? Like for every symptom of ADHD that can cause challenge, like real challenges in real life, there is positives at the other side of it, So I think the missing piece is the education for all of us to understand, how to sort of get the benefits out of people with ADHD, how to, not benefits, but sort of how to create an ecosystem in the world where everybody is being raised up, even if we process things differently. But as long as everybody knows, then we're all having the right conversation rather than having a lot of sort of challenges in relationships, in at work, etc. So, or within ourselves. Anyway, another short story long. Hopefully that answered you somewhere in that.
No, that's perfect. And by the way, listen on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Nella Dwyer. You can follow her on Instagram, is at ADH Diversity on Instagram. So when going to my next question, you mentioned the word hyperfocus. And I think that's something that's very intriguing. When you think about hyperfocus or fast thinking, what are some of the things that you've seen creatives be able to turn that natural trait into their own advantage in high pressure environments?
Yeah, so really, really good question. So ADHD can be described as a strength of hyperfocus and a deficit of interest. Okay, so what does that mean? So with ADHD, if we have got no interest in something, then it's extremely hard, if not really impossible, to be able to focus on something. So when somebody has a keen interest in something, we're usually very, very, very good at it. And we often excel more than the general population would at it if we have the interest. Now, I suppose, it's not about how do we make things more interesting so we get them done. Often it's what's blocking your interest. So I always kind of give this graph, and it's a bit of a, lots of acronyms, but I'll kind of say it slowly. I tend to talk very fast in true ADHD fashion, so I'm trying to talk slowly. But often we have the intention to do something, and we need to have interest. So if we have interest and intention, that's great. Then we can have the attention to get the ignition to execute the function of something. So to, take action on something, right? So I'll say that again. So usually we have the intention, but often we don't have the interest, or that's the challenging part. But if we have those two, intention and interest, then we can have the attention to get the ignition to execute the function of something. So often it's about, well, what is blocking my interest? So if somebody with ADHD has a task that they need to do, it's, if it's not interesting, okay, well, what would be blocking your interest? Often that can be, I don't have all the information yet. Okay, who can you ask, right? So often the step one often when we think something is step number one, it's usually step number 3, because our brains are very fast paced. So we usually kind of go 0 to 100 and forget all the steps right in front of us that need to be taken in order to get something done. So I suppose, how can we use hyperfocus as an asset? That's another part of what I do when I work with people one-to-one, or if I work with some NGOs and multinationals. So if I'm doing trainings with them, or if I'm working with somebody one-to-one, that's part of what I said about, building their personal operationals manual and building, sort of understanding what their actual interests are, what their past successes are, and what strengths contributed to them, having those successes, and how do we take them and attach them to whatever their goals are going forward. And that's usually where you get seeing people being quite successful at whatever their goals are. So, that hyper-focus, shows up when we have a keen interest. And I suppose, like you mentioned in the workplace, that's what I meant about sort of the education, that if I'm doing some talks at the moment here in Ireland. I live between here in Kinsale in Ireland and Los Angeles. And right now I'm in Ireland doing a few talks, and, I'm talking in a few weeks to a couple hundred HR professionals on understanding ADHD, so that when they have people either in the hiring process or in the workplace that have ADHD, they can be able to identify the strengths of somebody and put them in those roles, because they're going to exceed way more and in probably twice as quick timing as somebody else who doesn't have ADHD, if the person is interested in that. So if you can identify in the workplace what Mary or Joe is really good, really interested in, they're going to be really good at it, and they're going to excel far more than anybody else. So why would it be wrong to switch up roles, right? To take this person away, put them in the more getting the thing done, like maybe the administration or the implementing of whatever the task is, but the idea generation or the creative side of it, for example, put the person with ADHD in that role. And that's usually when you see everybody's sort of excelling, and the sort of overwhelm going down, and the relationship challenges that can come up in the workplace when people are just not having the right conversation, because somebody may be looking at somebody's performance review in the wrong ways, like in communication style, whereas maybe that person has a very different communication style. And if you understood that, then you would understand the way that you're maybe marking that isn't actually fully with full knowledge of the real story. And I can give lots of examples of that. But anyway, so I'm going off on a tangent a little bit. But, if somebody with ADHD has an interest in something, they can absolutely hyper-focus on it. Just like I said with my music career, I really, against all the odds, I had a baby when my daughter, had her when I was trying, in a very creative course, loving it. So I suppose when you put somebody, the reason I mentioned that is because everybody said, God, how did you focus on, have that resilience with your music career despite lots of challenges and go back to school and all that kind of thing? And for me, it wasn't difficult because I had an interest. I was so interested. It filled me up. It gave me that dopamine, I didn't find it difficult. So it's kind of confusing when people say, God, you did so well. I'm like, did I? I just did me, no, I didn't do great in administration or life admin or whatever, but we can delegate those things, or we can, when we understand that our brains don't work in that way, we can, if we have a good support system or knowledge of of what's going on, then that can help. So, there's a multifaceted answer for you.
Once again, you're listening on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Nella Dwyer. You can follow her on IG, ADHD Diversity. Also, I want to mention my next question. You talked about working with multinational companies, NGOs. My question for you is, what trends have you been noticing and how organizations are adapting to neurodiverse employees?
Where would I start with that one? Honestly, I think we're far more behind than we realize. If I'm honest, a lot of companies have great intentions, which is great, and they have, they have adopted strategies, etc. But I just don't think there's actually enough being done. I don't think there's enough conversations. I think a lot of the time companies can be afraid of sort of embracing this too much because they feel like maybe it's going to cost company money to provide more accommodations. And in my experience, it's truly the opposite. Because if you are constantly having people, also, I suppose the other thing is, in a company, if somebody who is hiring or somebody who is at the top, and this is, I've seen this so much, is neurodiverse themselves, whether they know it or not, they're going to hire a lot of neurodivergent people. So, and just like with anyone, if you're going to hire somebody, you want to hire people who have the same and you don't want to hire with the same strengths. You want to hire people who have strengths in things you might be weaker in, and vice versa, right? So that's when then things can really, if the education piece isn't there, the people, there can be a lot of, sick days, time off, having to rehire all the time. That's very expensive time-wise and, just in lots of ways. So, I think that embracing sort of an ecosystem in the workplace that is neurodivergent, understanding, focused, friendly, etc., it's just the beginning. And once companies do that, I do train into a company, and when they really embrace that, then they actually, everybody is just thriving together because nobody's seeing it as a bad thing they just need to make accommodations for, and that the conversation around it being a negative thing sort of gets lifted a bit because it's not a bad thing. It is if you try and fit something into a box that wasn't made for that thing. Yeah, of course, that thing is not going to perform well. And I don't mean people are things, but, I'm just trying to make a metaphor for the example. But, very quick example. I used to work in a gym when I was about 19, and one manager got very frustrated with me because I kept forgetting to do the admin. There was a checklist. I was like, ADHDers hate rules unless we come up with them ourselves and we agree with them, because authenticity is also very important. And usually we can problem solve better than, a lot of people that have made the rules. And it can be frustrating because we can think of better ways and easier and more effective ways to do things. Anyway, so I was crap at the admin, really, really bad at the admin. But I was great at chatting to the customers and getting them to understand the benefits of them signing up for memberships for the gym. So one manager would get really frustrated with me and just keep giving me like warnings and all that. And I was getting frustrated because I knew I didn't deserve those warnings, etc. No, I did for not doing the admin, I suppose, but I just forgot about it and I was busy getting people memberships. And to me, that was more valuable for the company, right? Anyway, and the other manager was like, hey, you're really, really good at selling the memberships. And he put me out on the street, and I was living in Dublin, the main city in Ireland. He put me out on the main street, Grafton Street, selling memberships. And I sold so many memberships that day. So how could that be wrong, right? So I made the company, a good bit of new custom for, the foreseeable. Okay, I didn't get my checklist done, but do you see what I mean? Like if you can kind of recognize in somebody that, it's if you're going to try and fit them into that box, and it's like, I suppose Einstein's, we all know, well, a lot of us will know that sort of saying, yes, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll forever think it's stupid, right? So, I think the main thing is that, companies are really leaning into educating themselves because they're only going to get benefits. They're going to get, really, really innovative ideas. They're going to get really, creative new ways to do things. They're going to lower the wasted time in meetings of how to, conflict resolution with different people. They're going to be able to have environments so that everybody is thriving. And if somebody is feeling overwhelmed and they just need a transition time in a room, they'll probably get more done in that room for the hour if they can hyperfocus, if you give them a task that you know is really, really strong for how their brain works. Anyway, it's very hard to answer in a very quick question, but I'm hoping that makes sense. I think we need to move the conversation from just companies providing more accommodations and having to give, thinking they're going to get less back, or that, they have to do this to be inclusive. It's not that, people who are neurodivergent have a lot of, innovation to offer. And, it can change the entire scope of a company. I've seen it happen, and again, how could that be wrong? So wouldn't it be sort of unwise not to embrace that? It's certainly not about, the short-sighted, we need to pay to give more accommodations and then that's going to bleed the resource of the company. No, that's not what actually happens if you do lean into sort of really educating everybody on what it is and what it is not. I actually did a talk last week in Belfast to about 150 female entrepreneurs, and I was going to talk about different tools that you can use with ADHD in the workplace. And I said, for the last 2 days, people were asking me, do you suffer with ADHD and, yourself? And I said, well, I don't suffer with it. I have it. Again, not to glamorize it, but I have it, and I use it to my advantage a lot as well. So I just changed the entire slides and the talk a few minutes before it to just what ADHD is and what it is not, because it's very misunderstood. So I suppose I feel like it's great that the conversation is starting and people are embracing it, but I think we have a long way to go.
You mentioned that you split your time between Ireland and Los Angeles. How do you manage such a dynamic lifestyle while staying productive and energized?
Well, you see, that's the thing, Shemaya, like the, stimulation like that actually is really good for ADHDers, So, for example, I have my little 400-year-old cottage here, and it's very quiet, a small little fishing village. But that's not great for me, actually, because if I'm in a very quiet environment with very little stimulation, then my brain is going to make up for that. So then my brain is just giving me so many different thoughts, and that can get overwhelming. Whereas if I'm in a sort of stimulating environment, so if I'm traveling or if I'm, I've got lots of things happening at the same time, that's when my brain is very calm. So actually that stimulation piece is really good for an ADHD brain, having the kind of multiple things going on at the same time that I'm interested in. So I love that, my idea of sort of, not a nice life would be just doing the same thing every day and, having the same kind of form of stimulation and that I can expect to have every day. I just can't think of anything worse, so I actually really thrive with having the, the sort of multiple homes and travels and, traveling a lot and the unpredictability of the music business and, working with new interesting clients from around the world. And so I really love that. And, I suppose most of my work with my ADHD business is online on Zoom, via Zoom. And then most of my work in the music business would be in real life. So, I guess I suppose my computer comes with me everywhere, no matter if I'm here or in Los Angeles. But then, in Los Angeles, I have a lot of stuff going on with different composers and and then I'll do recordings here as well. So, and then I tour in China most years with Video Games Live in China for about a month or two. So, it's really diverse, but actually that really helps my brain. It stimulates my brain, and I'm more productive actually when I'm sort of I've got that kind of juxtaposition of being in different places all the time. I'm traveling.
Once again, listen, Refocused Radio and watching us online. Talking to our guest today, Nella Dwyer. Go follow her on Instagram is at ADH Diversity. I had to ask the last question. So I don't know how can people listen to your music if someone's listening right now? Like, well, shoot, I wanna check out what kind of songs he's doing. So kind of in the last few minutes we have, explain a little bit about your sound and how people can check it out.
Yeah, so I suppose my sound, I always say that like my music always would have started out in folk music, really, like storytelling. And I suppose people compare, I write multi-genre stuff. I work with lots of different, genres, but And then I sing in video games, like I sing in World of Warcraft video game, and that kind of changed my life, being the singer of that game. And so I suppose kind of world music, folk, Enya-esque, Sinead O'Connor-esque, that type of thing. So yeah, my website is www.iamnella.com. And then my Instagram for my music is Nella's Music, NELLASMUSIC. And then my ADHD diversity Instagram, they're both linked in each other's. So whichever Instagram you go on, you'll find the other one. And I'm on Spotify and all the different places. But my website's probably the best place, iamnella.com. And I have lots of projects happening this year. So there'll be a lot of music released, kind of further along in this year that I'm really excited about. We can't really chat about yet, but yeah, it'll all be updated on my socials and my website and stuff as well.
Last question. You did mention about China. I think that's pretty interesting. What has been your experience being able to travel around the world, basically? And how was it being able to have your presence around different cultures? And what have you been able to appreciate with, people that are different, man?
Yeah. I think, as I mentioned, like getting that opportunity, I had a #1 record in Ireland called Revolution a couple of years ago in 2017, I think. And then I met the composer of World of Warcraft at a random event here in the American Ambassador's residence that I was just invited to. And then that kind of changed everything. He listened to my music. He chose me for the game. There's 150 million players of that game. So it just blew up my life in a good way. And so I get, that's when I started going to Los Angeles. And then Video Games Live is the touring outfit that I tour with. And they tour all, Tommy Tallarico owns it, but they tour all the Blizzard Entertainment video game music. So we have like 3,000 or 4,000 people a night. And, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I've got to tour in Germany with the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra with that music, and same in China, and just traveling to another city every night. It's amazing, especially like I had no idea of the video game world. I never had any plans to be doing video game music, which I thought was all beeps and bloops, but it's actually beautiful, orchestral, otherworldly music. And so I get to explore different parts of my voice and everything, which is fun. So yeah, I guess, it's amazing. Like touring with sort of Russell Brower is the composer of World of Warcraft, and he's the conductor that tours with me, and he's one of my best friends, and he's producing one of my my next single actually, and I'm co-writing his album with him. So that's fun. But so he would come, and then we have some American crew, and then some Chinese crew as well when we're doing China. So yeah, it's amazing. It's I'm really grateful for the experiences. It's definitely different. China is a totally different world, and it's amazing to see the audiences in China respond to like seeing the music and hearing music in real life from the games that they play so much. And then we've got like a screen behind us with developments of the game that they wouldn't have seen. And, so they're so fanatical. And like when I got involved in the video game music industry, like I learned that the video game business is bigger than the music business and the movie business put together. And World of Warcraft for a very long time was the biggest video game. So it's crazy to think that I'm the singer on one of the biggest, well, arguably the biggest media in the world, whereas it's not seen as kind of mainstream. It's mad. Well, in America it is more, in Ireland not so much. But yeah, so it kind of, it's crazy. It's just this whole world I didn't really even I didn't even really know existed. And so that's given me so many opportunities with, a lot of people I work with. From Los Angeles, a lot of well-known kind of composers and everything, it made them open my email when I said, I sing in this game. They're like, oh, we know that, so it just gave me so much opportunity. Whereas, they may not have even opened the email if I didn't have that one line at the beginning to say, look, you may know me from this. And then they're actually going to open and listen to my voice if, so that really exploded my world. So, really grateful that Russell Brower gave me that opportunity. But yeah, it's amazing. I love working with people from all over the world. I had another very well-known composer reach out to me last week from some music consultant in London I met 10 years ago. Met him at some Romanian conference with music, and he said he wanted a female singer for something, and he suggested me, and then he got on to me, and then I had a Zoom with him, and now I'm going to be flying to another country in the Middle East in a month or two to do this massive new song with him to celebrate his 25 years in the music industry, and he does lots of Netflix scoring and all that. So yeah, you just never know what's going to happen, from one interaction. You really don't. So I suppose if anyone's listening that sort of ever gets to just invited to a networking event, you have no idea where it's going to lead to, and I know that, I think every interaction you have with anybody can lead to your entire life changing, so we all must appreciate each other, for that, for sure. And it's usually in the most unexpected ways, Anyway, I'm getting very philosophical.
That's great, because I don't think people really understand what you're saying is actually big time. Like, that's big. I mean, we went from your business to like potentially a whole nother episode. And unfortunately, we had to wrap it up. But I would say, might have to have you back on so we can talk about the video game world, because there's a lot of people in the United States that are big on video games, period. So that'll be a very interesting topic we can have maybe in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
You have like a Netflix documentary style story. Like, you should document your whole journey going to the Middle East, because that will be very good content.
Yeah, there was a documentary done on me a few years ago in Ireland. It's on my website, iamnella.com. You can watch, but I think it's due for an update. It's been like China and all that didn't happen. That wasn't included, because I think we did that documentary in like 2018. So yeah, there's definitely, you're giving me inspiration to kind of maybe get another one up and running or something. Because yeah, you forget when you're living your own life that it might be kind of interesting for other people to watch.
Kinda.
I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, everything I heard so far is like, wow, I should be watching this on Netflix right now, because I would literally binge watch this, because the way it just flows is very interesting. And I think a lot of people, they miss out on just flowing, because we have this rigid society, and it's like, do this, do that, do this, do that, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And sometimes as a creative person, like you said, with your job at the gym, it's like, nah, like there's some easier paths to make that close for that person to be a member. So with all that said, talking to our guest today, Nella Dwyer, go follow her on Instagram. You can find all her music stuff there, as well as at ADH Diversity. Like always, for all times that we say on the show, I want to say to you, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.